Have you ever thought about how one single city could rule the known world for more than 1,000 years? Well, that was Rome. It's an insane story, right? It kicks off as this tiny little village and balloons into this colossal empire that, believe it or not, shaped our laws, our languages, even the buildings we see today. But this isn't just a story about conquest. Oh no, it's a tale of insane ambition, mind-blowing innovation, and, well, a spectacular collapse that literally changed the course of history.
And that's the big question, isn't it? The real head-scratcher. How does a power that seemed, for all intents and purposes, eternal, just vanish? Like, poof, gone from the map? Well, the answer isn't some simple single event. It's a long, complicated story that, like all the best ones, starts right at the beginning.
So, let's dive into that unlikely rise. Rome's story, it doesn't start with a dang. It actually starts with a myth. A pretty wild tale about twin brothers, a she-wolf, and a city built on 7 hills. But out of that legend, something incredibly real and, frankly, revolutionary popped up. A completely new way of running things.
And things moved fast in the early days. I mean, really fast. After they got rid of their last king, the Romans were, let's just say, super skeptical of anyone having absolute power. So they created something totally new. In 509 BC, the Roman Republic was born. And this was the launch pad for massive expansion, which led straight to its first major test, a series of brutal life-or-death wars against their big rival, Carthage.
And this new idea of theirs, it was absolutely revolutionary. The core concept was that power wasn't something you inherited. Nope, it was shared, and it was governed by the rule of law. For its time, this was just groundbreaking stuff. This whole system of checks and balances, it became the engine that fueled Rome's early strength. It gave them the stability they needed to grow way, way beyond just being a single city.
Okay, so how did this whole machine actually work? Well, you had the Senate, which was basically an advisory council of the city's elite, the elder statesmen. Then, for the real executive power, you had 2 consuls. Think of them like co-presidents. Each one could veto the other, which was a clever way to stop any one person from getting too powerful. The citizen assemblies, they gave the regular people a voice. And the glue holding it all together was this fundamental idea that absolutely no one was above the law.
But you know how it goes. As Rome got bigger and richer, the system started to show some cracks. It began to strain. You had these powerful generals with super loyal armies, and they started to kind of challenge the Senate's authority. And then, one man's ambition comes along and pushes the whole republic right to its breaking point.
And that man was, of course, Julius Caesar. This guy was a brilliant military genius. He goes and conquers Gaul, that's modern-day France, and gets incredibly famous and wealthy. The Senate, getting pretty nervous about his popularity, orders him to disband his army. So he's at a crossroads, and he makes a choice. He crosses the Rubicon River, which was just a small stream, but it marked the border of Italy. Bringing his army across it, that was a massive, irreversible act of treason. It kicked off a civil war. He won, obviously, becoming the most powerful man in Rome. But that power was a direct threat to the Republic. And the irony? The senators who stabbed him to death in 44 BC, they did it thinking they were saving the Republic. The very system his ambition had already, for all practical purposes, destroyed.
So did killing Caesar bring the Republic back? Not a chance. It just unleashed even more civil war. But out of all that chaos, one figure emerges, his adopted son, Octavian. He would eventually become Augustus, Rome's very first emperor. And with him, believe it or not, an unprecedented era of peace and prosperity kicked off.
And this golden age lasted for 200 years. Just let that number sink in. 200 years. They called it the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. And it was this incredible period of stability. For 2 straight centuries, the entire Mediterranean world was pretty much free from any major wars. And that peace, man, it allowed trade, culture, and technology just explode on a scale the world had literally never seen before.
And this is where you really see the genius of Roman rule. See, they didn't just conquer stuff. They built stuff. They engineered an entire empire. We're talking thousands of miles of stone roads that didn't just move armies, they connected this huge territory with trade and new ideas. They built aqueducts that brought fresh water into massive cities, which made that kind of urban life even possible. And of course, these giant structures like the Colosseum, they were unmistakable symbols of Roman power and ingenuity. I mean, they're still standing today.
But, like we all know, no golden age lasts forever. So, how did the empire crumble? Well, Rome didn't just fall in a day. It wasn't one big event. Its decline was this long, slow, grinding process. You could call it a death by 1,000 cuts that happened over centuries.
And you can really see the contrast here when you put them side by side. The very things that made Rome so strong, they just started to rot from the inside out. That stable government, it turned into a mess of political corruption and endless civil war. The strong economy, crippled by insane taxes and runaway inflation. And those mighty legions, they were stretched incredibly thin, fighting these constant, draining wars on literally every single border.
And the thing is, none of these problems were happening on their own. They were all connected, feeding into each other in this terrible, vicious cycle. You see, the political instability made it impossible to fix the economy. A weak economy meant they couldn't pay for a strong military. And a weak military? Well, it couldn't handle the growing pressure from migrating tribes the people the Romans just called barbarians, who were now pushing hard into their territory.
So, in a pretty desperate move to manage this whole crisis, an emperor named Diocletian made a really drastic decision. He split the entire empire in two. The idea was to make it easier to govern, but while he was trying to save it, this division really just sealed the fate of the western half, and now had fewer resources and a lot more immediate threats on its doorstep.
And then you get the symbolic end. In 476 AD, the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire was just quietly removed from power. There wasn't some huge epic battle for the city of Rome. It was more like a quiet fizzle. The power had already been gone for a long time. The West had fallen.
But here's the kicker. The fall of the government in Rome was not the end of Rome's influence, not by a long shot. Its real, lasting power wasn't in its armies, it was in its ideas. And those ideas have echoed all the way through history and are still shaping the world we live in right at this very moment.
I mean, just think about how Rome shapes your world today. When you walk into a courtroom, you're seeing Roman legal ideas at work. If you speak Spanish, French, or Italian, you're basically speaking modern Latin. The calendar we use every single day? Yep, a Roman invention. Our entire idea of what a republic is or what a senate does, that's a direct inheritance from them.
So in the end, Rome's story is this incredibly powerful reminder, isn't it? All civilizations rise and all civilizations fall. Empires, no matter how powerful they seem, are temporary. But the ideas they leave behind, their innovations, their culture, that stuff can last forever. It can achieve a kind of immortality, outlasting the stone and marble it was all built from.